Hey guys, Chris from Hockey Tutorial here, and today we're going to be taking a look at cages and visors and the main difference between them. So depending on what country you're in, what league you play in, and of course what age you are, you might have to wear a cage standardly, but if you have the choice and you're kind of debating between the two, trying to work out which one will be best for you, we'll go over the pros and cons of the different pieces of equipment here, the cage and also the visor, and highlight some of the areas that might be able to help you make a decision on the two. So taking a look at the cage, it's the first one I've got over here with me. The main advantage of this one, which is going to be the number one advantage, is going to be the fact that your face is fully protected while you're using the cage. Obviously the visors are, depending on how low you get them, a certain portion of your face, it might be your nose, your mouth, your cheekbones, is going to be exposed, which can leave you sort of open to get hit by sticks, pucks or other players, which can be incredibly painful. So first point, definitely going to be the full protection. The second point, because it's not glass, you don't have to worry about it scratching or it fogging up like the visors. This is less maintenance. And it also makes things a lot easier in the long run. It's the sort of product that you have to buy and not have to worry about cleaning it, making sure it doesn't get scratched, like you would if you had a visor. And taking a look at some of the disadvantages of the cage, main disadvantage with this is going to be the fact that it obstructs your view. A lot of players complain that depending on sort of which cages that they have, what colours the grille across the front of this cage is, it can obstruct your view with other players. In terms of your eye contact with your teammates, it can be an obstruction for that. It can obstruct your view of the puck, which is going to be the biggest complaint. Obviously, depending on which cages you go for, you can have some cages that will have a special arrangement with these metal grids across the front there to kind of give you a much better overall view. Like you can say, these two metal poles on the hill will be much closer together, giving you much bigger portions for your eyes to be able to see through, but at the end of the day, the cage is still a cage. One of the other main disadvantages is going to be the weight. Cages are much heavier than visors, it's a lot more material and it's metal. So your helmet's going to be a lot heavier, a lot sluggish, which might get you a bit more tired quickly on the ice, and also it just puts your head a little bit off balance while you're on the ice, which can be a bit tricky to get used to. The second thing that a lot of players like to complain about with the cages is the fact that you have to lift the whole thing up if you want to have a drink. And because it's a cage, if I show you this one over here, if I lift it up, it just drops back down, which can be incredibly annoying if you're just trying to have a drink, sit on the bench for a few minutes and then get some breath back, which can be quite annoying. Of course, you can get bottles that will fit through the cage's gaps, but those can be annoying. If you lose those, you have to buy a specific type of bottle, which can be a bit annoying. The visors obviously expose your mouth, or you can have visors that lift up and stay up, rather than the cages that lift up and drop down. Of course, another disadvantage of the cages is that depending on how much money you spend on the cage, you might be susceptible to rusting. If your cage gets wet and it's left in your bag overnight, left in the car overnight, you can start to develop rust on it, which is going to be quite annoying, and that's not something that you're going to want on something that's so close to your face. So another point I wanted to take a look at is when you pay more for a cage, what are you getting for it? So as you go up in the different levels of brands. The main difference is going to be your field of view. As you pay a little bit more for cages, you can get some that have this grill over here slightly, the protection around the grill will be organised slightly differently. So like these two bars over here will be much closer together, and the portions around where your eyes will be a lot bigger, just to give you a bit of a better view while you're on the ice. The other main thing that you're going to be paying for is going to be the weight of the actual cage itself. As you go up into different views, you'll get cages that are made fully from titanium, which is a much lighter material than the ones that you have these the ones that these are made from over here, which means it's going to feel a lot more comfortable on the ice. You'll be a lot more balanced. And of course, your chin cup over here. If you go for sort of a low rate or low end cages, you'll find that these are made from very basic materials that don't really offer you any real comfort, support, or antibacterial lining, which sort of helps it not to smell as you use it quite a while, because you're going to be getting quite sweaty inside there. So of course the next one we're going to take a look at is going to be the visors. These are probably going to be one of the most popular choices on the market, purely because it gives you a much better field of view. You don't have the cage in your face and blocking your eye contact with your teammates or obstructing your view from the puck and the game. Of course, the main advantage of these ones is going to be the fact that it's much lighter, so you're much more balanced and you feel a lot more natural while you're on the ice. Getting used to playing hockey with a helmet is one thing. If you're new to hockey and you've got to put one of these on your head, it takes a bit of time to get used to the weight. So having a massive metal cage in front of you does really help. These over here, on the other hand, are really light. Of course, as I said earlier on, one of the points, if you want to be able to lift it up to wipe your face down to get rid of the sweat, or if you want to just be a bit more comfortable, you're on the bench and relaxing with your teammates and on a break, it's a lot easier and more manageable to do. So one of the main advantages of this one, being able to see very clearly, is going to be one of the main disadvantages. Of course, because this is a visor, it doesn't cover your full face. The main disadvantage of it is going to be the protection. If you see, there's a lot of different visors that you can get that will come slightly lower down, depending on which brands and models you go for, but the main disadvantage is that the tip of your nose, the bottom of your nose, and your mouth is completely exposed. which leaves you open to getting hit by pucks, getting hit by sticks, other players. It can be incredibly risky to use one of these rather than using a full cage in terms of how safe you're going to be on the ice. I mean, if you look at some of the NHL players, these phenomenal amounts of players that are missing teeth, they've had their noses broken several times. Some people do use visors and don't encounter any problems, but it's going to be one of those things that it's just a chance that you're going to be able to take. Me personally, I will always go with a cage because I just don't want to have my face destroyed when I'm on the ice. One of the other disadvantages between this is a lot of hockey players we're not all professional players, are we? We don't get paid to play the sport. We do it recreationally, we do it for fun, or we do it for college or school. And that means that one of the main things that you're going to have to do is go to another job after you've played a match. The last thing that you want to do is use a visor, have your face smashed in, your nose broken, your teeth missing, and then have to go to work the next day. That can tie into loads of different problems, with insurance, with you losing your job, and you being presentable at work. So for me personally, that's going to be a massive disadvantage. I wouldn't want to play, have my face destroyed, and then have to go to work the next day. So that's another point. So I always pick a cage over a visor for that reason. Next point is going to be the durability. The visors, of course, depending on which ones you pay for, you have anti-scratch on the front and anti-fog on the inside. But if it does scratch on the front of the surface, it's incredibly annoying to play because your eyes will constantly be focusing on the scratch, which can be very, very irritating. It's like trying to drive a car with a dirty windscreen. You find yourself focusing on the dirt that's on the windscreen rather than on what's on the road, which is another point to mention. And of course, the fact that these are anti-scratch and anti-fog on the inside doesn't mean that it's not going to fog or scratch. It just means that it'll be a bit more resistant to it. But they are still going to fog up slightly, which is probably going to be the second disadvantage with the visors, because fog means that you have to stop, wipe your shield because you can't see what you're doing on the ice. Another disadvantage with these, of course, a lot of players don't buy the same helmet and the same visor, same cage and the same helmet, of course, same thing goes for that. It's going to be the fact that you have to buy, or you get fittings with these to fit different brands of helmets. Of course, they're not too bad to fit onto different helmets, but if you lose the fittings that come with the visors, they can be incredibly hard to track down and find other sort of fittings that will fit. People have to kind of pick up DIY habits to be able to adapt their visors to be able to fit again if they lose fittings. With the cages, it's a bit easier because there's more access to the bolts and screws that hold the cage to the helmet, so that's another point to keep in mind. So now taking a quick look, one of the last things I wanted to mention about visors was, of course, there's loads of different shapes, colours, sizes, and styles of visors. You can see this one over here sticks out quite a lot. Some players might like that because they like the sort of room between their face and the visor, which means that you can get towels in there, wipe the sweat off quite easily. But of course it sticks out quite a lot, which means that you might be able to get a puck underneath there, which, depending on how much protection you want while you're on the ice, is something to consider. But like this one over here, this is a Frontier visor. If I just show you it next to this one over here, you can see if it was hooked on, how much closer it would be to your face. It's much, much closer to your face. Kind of gives you a bit more protection on the ice in terms of the puck being able to get up underneath it, but of course it restricts things like being able to wipe the sweat off your face, and if you want to be able to move the visor away to have a drink, things like that can get quite irritating, but that's just another thing to keep in mind. So another option that you guys have is a combination of having a cage and a visor. There's a lot of brands out there, like I believe it's FX50 that have, that's the name of the model name, you guys can Google it, there'll be an image down below in the video description, or a link to an image, where it's a cage that has a visor fitted where your eyes go. So this gives you sort of the best of both worlds. You have good visibility that you would do in a cage, in a visor, but you also have the protection that you would have in a cage. There's also a lot of models that Bauer make as well, that give you the combination of both. It's like a visor that protects the whole of your face, but the main problems with that, of course, is that you're going to get the disadvantages of the cage and the disadvantages of the visor. First one is going to be the weight. They're going to be much, much heavier than a cage and the visor, so this is something you're going to have to contend with, because I know a lot of players like to have their sort of gear quite balanced on the ice. They don't want one bit being too incredibly heavy. One of the other things you're going to have to contend with, of course, is the fogging problem. It does have a visor on it, so you do have to worry about the fogging and the scratching problem. So that's one of the reasons that these combis or combinations of the two haven't been too popular for players on the ice. Another problem with it is, of course, because it's heavier, the same thing with being able to lift it up to take a drink can be incredibly annoying. It protects the whole of your face, so you're not going to be able to get a bottle in there quite easily to be able to have a drink. So that's another issue. And one of the other things to keep in mind, of course, I briefly touched on this at the start of the video, depending on which country you're in, which league you play for, or what level you're going to be playing in, of course, your age, you might find that you might have to wear a cage. I know in the UK, if you're under 18, you don't have a choice, you have to wear a cage, but once you're over 18, you have the choice of wearing specific visors. You can't wear tinted visors. There's a whole load of list of rules. If you guys want to see the rules, there'll be a link in the video description for you guys to see exactly what is allowed and what isn't allowed. I know in America it's slightly different. It's not really down to what age you are, but it's down to what league you play for. I think that's what the rules that they have over there. Of course, if I'm wrong, be sure to point it out in the comment section down below. But I do believe that you have to play in specific leagues to be able to wear visors rather than cages. But of course, this is just something for you guys to think on in case you go rushing out to buy Visor and find out that your particular league of hockey doesn't allow you to use it. So just keep that in mind. But of course, if you want more information, there'll be a link down below to hockeytutorial.com so you can check out a full article on this, which will have everything in a bit more detail. But share your thoughts. What do you prefer? Do you prefer to use a cage? Why do you prefer to use a cage, or do you prefer to use a visor? And why do you prefer to use a visor? Drop your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think, and take care till next time, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you found it helpful, and of course register at hockeytutorial.com. And the links there to follow us on Twitter and also like us on Facebook will be down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.